Hey,
Brad.
Jules. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah,
Nice.
pretty good. Drinking a little Amaretto Sour here. So.
Little Amaretto Sour. I am going to ask you a question,
All right.
which you can then ask me. Outside of our podcast, are there any cocktails you've been drinking lately that you want to talk about and make note of?
Any cocktails that we've been drinking? Oh man, Jules, that's so hard for me to answer because like, one, I drink a lot of the cocktails we make on the podcast.
I
Two,
know.
um, I'm like, I love an old fashioned. Okay, here's an example. I was in Vegas, right?
Okay.
And we're out there for the Vikings Raiders game.
Of course.
And, I had to go look up Chris,
Mm-hmm.
not just a bartender, right? Not just a bartender, because he
Love
works
that
at
guy.
Vetri, which is in the Palms.
Uh-huh.
And I highly recommend for anybody who's listening, if you find yourself in Vegas, go to the Palms
Go visit.
and
Yeah.
go visit Chris at the bar at Vetri, because one, he is such a nice guy.
Yeah.
Two, he makes a hell of a cocktail. And three, like,
Bonus.
it's really, he talked about the view he had when we did the interview with him and we did the mojito.
Mm-hmm.
That's for real, man. That is
Really?
a great view. Yeah. So the
Wow.
food's fantastic. If you don't like what you're eating, let me know. I'll buy it for you. Not really, but that's
Right.
that's how much I believe.
Bill
So
me.
it was just,
Yeah.
it was good. And it was cool. It was cool to sit there. And he said, like, yeah, people come up and visit him all the time. So he's totally cool with it. So
That's
thanks,
awesome.
Chris. Yeah.
That's awesome. So old
Oh,
fashioned.
and so what was I
at
drinking?
Vetri.
Old fashioned. Yeah. He
Yeah.
made me an old fashioned and it was outstanding.
Damn.
So
If you can make a
Yeah.
good old fashioned, I mean, you can do
Yes.
anything at that point. Well, Brad, I do have to say, I've been drinking a cocktail that, and I think when this podcast comes out, it'll be after the holiday, but kind of coming into the new year. If you're not doing dry January, or even if you're looking for something fun, maybe you are doing dry January, I don't know. This cocktail is so fantastic. It's, I call myself the CEO of Spritz season.
Mhm.
It's a Lambrusco Spritz. Have you ever heard of it?
Oh, yeah. I've not had a Lambrusco Spritz, but I've had Lambrusco.
Oh my God. I have been sipping that. When we're recording this, it's before the holidays. So when I go home for the holidays, it's what I'm going to be making, that and a dirty martini for everyone. It's an Amaro, it's Lambrusco, it's soda water.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah, soda water, and you garnish it with olive oil and olives and a grapefruit slice. Oh, and a fresh
What?
grapefruit juice. Yeah, it's so freaking good. So that's what I've
Whoa.
been drinking lately, and I just want everybody to know, outside of the cocktails that we make on this podcast, you need to try the Lambrusco Spritz. It's fantastic.
Okay, so for starters, this is going to be so frustrating. We're not going to go into the recipe right now, but I hope you've got that somewhere where people can find it.
I do. Yeah, it's on my website. It's on my Instagram. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Okay, all right.
It's out there.
What do you call? What do you call it? Lambrusco Spritz?
Yeah.
All right.
Lambrusco Spritz. It's really, really good. But today's recipe is
not even fair. But okay, yeah. Today's recipe is the Amaretto
equally.
Sour. Wah, wah.
No. I think it's equally as good. So here's what I say. Lambrusco Spritz to start, wine for dinner, Amaretto Sour for dessert. And we have just set you up for success.
Boom. Yeah.
Seriously, I love
Orange
an
digestion.
Amaretto Sour. It's one of those where I make it and I'm like, God darn it. And maybe it's because, and people who've been following me long enough, who've even been listening to this podcast long enough, know I'm a sucker for egg white. I love that velvety, frothy texture. That with a little sweet liqueur like Di Serono that I'm using, Amaretto more generically, it's fantastic. So I'm so excited to be covering this cocktail because Brad, believe it or not, when I first started out, join Jules and making cocktails, a lot of people, this was one of the most requested cocktails outside of like an old fashioned. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it's definitely making a comeback, and we'll kind of talk about that, right? Because like there's somebody that's responsible for the comeback. But this is this is a cocktail that some people are like, ugh, because they're thinking about the Amaretto Sours of like the 80s and the 70s, where it's like sour mix and
Right.
amaretto and
Right.
ice, and that's it. Like, gross. Of course you don't like it, right? With the big red cherry in there, like in
I
the
don't
orange
like it.
slice. Like, get out of here. Like,
I don't
no
like it.
way.
I don't like it.
But you throw that sour mix over your shoulder and you incorporate a little fresh lemon
Sayonara.
juice, a little simple syrup. And in this case, we're
Money.
also incorporating some cask strength bourbon and an egg
Or
white. Yeah.
cognac.
Or cognac. Yeah.
Cognac.
Like it's the drink is way better when fresh ingredients are involved, which is the true for like anything. So yeah, we'll get into like a better version of the Amaretto Sour. We'll call it the Morganthaler's Amaretto Sour.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're getting into what's your drink called?
Yeah. So we're doing the Amaretto Flip.
The
It
Flip.
Yep, it takes inspiration from the Amaretto Sour because we're using Amaretto. But
Mhm.
instead of using an egg white, and please, you guys, don't turn off this podcast when I say it. I promise it's delicious. We're using a whole egg. I love egg white
And
cocktails, but
ambergris, right? Aren't you using ambergris in this one too? From the eggnog episode.
ambergris.
Remember
What?
the ambergris from the eggnog episode? That's the grossest thing I've
No.
ever heard. All right.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
I'm moving on. Yeah.
no, we're
Go
not
back and listen to
doing
it.
animal guts in this one. Um, but all
Sorry.
right.
People are going to be like, was that an inside joke? No, just go back and listen to the eggnog episode.
No, yeah.
All right.
That's
So, all right. So we're doing
disgusting. This cocktail is not.
flip.
We're
Yeah,
doing an
a
Amaretto Flip.
We're doing a sour. And then we're going into kind of the backstory on kind of how the Amaretto Sour got here.
Yes.
And then you've got tips on how to make Amaretto.
I've got tips on how to make Amaretto. It's never going to beat the OG stuff, but darn it, it's good and easy to make at home. But it is
Cool.
easier than you think. And a lot of people have been making it for years and years. But the most popular to find at the store is that Di Serono and Lazzaroni.
Lazzaroni. Yeah. And there's some others too. But
Yeah.
all right. Well, I tell you what, I could use another drink. So
Yeah, me too. Ready
let's
to
do
make
it.
them?
Yep.
Let's give the people what they want. All right, Uncle Brad. I love this cocktail so much, and I'm so excited to see you make it the right way. So walk me through the classic Amaretto Sour.
Yeah. I'm going to walk you through, but over from my cocktail station.
Yes,
here.
yes.
You can still
Cocktail
hear me?
station is a moshed.
All right. You can still hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So we are making the Amaretto Sour, but it's probably more appropriate to say we're making the Morganthaler Amaretto Sour because this recipe actually comes from Jeffrey Morganthaler, and it is way better than the Amaretto Sour made with the traditional sweet and sour mix, and
Yeah,
incorporates a little cask strength bourbon because the cask strength bourbon helps to fight off the sweetness that Amaretto and even a little simple syrup brings to the cocktail.
Yep.
So,
yep. Agree.
right.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
All right.
Walk me through it.
So I've got my Amaretto di Sorno. Let's see. I've got a little lime, little lemon. I did juice the lemon
ahead of time.
Sorry,
smart.
I did juice.
That's
the
a
lemon
good tip.
ahead of time.
Every time
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh shoot, yeah, that's a good idea.
And I also kind of pre-measured my egg white because this actually calls for not just an egg white, but a half-ounce egg white. So, all right, let me grab my shaker tin here and move my glass out the way.
Boston shaker, tin on tin.
Boston shaker, tin on tin. So I'm going to add my egg white first, even though it's pre-measured. There's no chance I'm going to bust the yolk in there, but you know, I still think it's good habit. Put your egg white in first in case you are just going freehand with that egg yolk. You don't want to get egg yolk in the drink and throw everything out. So, all right. So I got my egg yolk in there. I'm going to do 1.5 ounces of Di Sorno. So here we go.
Di Serono.
Di Sorno. All right. Di Sorno. In you go. Di Sorno.
Yum. I love that liqueur, by the way. Like I could drink that over ice. I know that that's kind of gnarly, but I love it.
No, it's not gnarly at all. Like that's totally fine. I love Amaretto. It's so good.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
All right. So now I'm going to use cask strength bourbon. So this is
Elijah
122
Craig
proof. Yeah, Elijah
Wow.
Craig. I'm trying to clear out some of my bottles that have a couple of swallows left. So this is a
Sure.
cask strength bourbon I have, and I'm going to go 3/4 ounce
Three
of the
quarter ounce.
cask strength bourbon.
Nice.
Boom. Put that off to the side. Now I'm going to do 1 ounce of lemon juice. Okay, pre-squeeze.
Love it. Love it.
Bada bing, bada
If
boom.
it's not fresh, we don't want it.
Right, and then I'm going with 1 teaspoon of simple syrup, which works out to be about like that.
Yeah,
So
that's smart. If you've never had amaretto before, it's on the sweeter side. So
100%.
yeah, just be
So
careful.
my egg white's already in there, and now what we're going to do is we're going to dry shake.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so we'll have to edit this.
Yep.
Podcast.
Yep. Shake it. 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 Yeah.
All right.
Woo. 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 Workout number 1.
Now we're going to get our ice, and I've got my ice in a little handy cooler here. So
Yeah. Workout number 2 commencing.
plenty of ice.
Oh yeah. That is my favorite sound, though. I mean, I'm kind of like a squirrel. Whenever I hear a cocktail shaker, I'm like, huh? Where? I love it.
All right. Now, got my drink. My glass ready. Pour this bad boy in. You know, he says to double strain, so I'm going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you shook that bitch hard. Look at that. God, look at that. I love it. That is a good froth, Brad. From over here, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, nice and frothy.
And did you have ice in your glass?
I put ice in my glass before we started, yeah.
No, I've seen both ways. And so I go back and forth because sometimes I like the ice in there and sometimes I just want it neat.
Yeah. So his recipe has ice in the glass. And I've had definitely shaken cocktails with a little egg white with ice in the glass. Doesn't bother me at all.
No,
So
sometimes I
with-
honestly kind of prefer it. Look at that cherry taco.
Yeah, this time it's a lemon peel with a cherry. So
wow. Ooh, I bet that tastes so good. I love this one so much. Boom.
Off the charts.
Yeah.
Great.
Uh-huh. So this is fun because it is using your main ingredient, which is the amaretto, but instead, and it's using an egg. But instead of making a sour, we are going to make a flip because right now, I don't know about you, I freaking love flips right now. I made a Shinar flip, which I kind of took inspiration from for this, and it was chef's kiss. So this cocktail
is it Shinar or is it Chinar?
I've just been saying Shinar.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
I know.
Shinar.
That's okay. Bring it. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off.
No, it's okay. So what's going to throw people off is my first ingredient. And I hope I don't offend or disgust anybody, but I hope I inspire and motivate people to try something new because we are going to be adding a whole egg into our cocktail shaker. Yes, yolk and all. Trust me. It's like a protein drink. Mm-hmm. So we're adding in 1 whole egg into our cocktail shaker. I love it so much. Let me just wipe my hands. Okay. Now from there, I'm going to add in a full ounce of my amaretto. If you do like the flavor of amaretto, you could go 1.5 ounces. I like it just 1 ounce because I'll tell you why in a second. So 1 ounce of the amaretto. And the reason why I did 1 ounce instead of 1.5 ounces is because I like playing with this cocktail with cognac over a rye whiskey. But I would say if you're going to do a rye, then I would do the 1.5 ounces of amaretto. But if you're going to go with a cognac, which also is slightly sweeter, I would do the 1 ounce of amaretto. So kind of up to preference. But I did 1 ounce of amaretto because I'm going to do 3/4 of an ounce of cognac.
All right. Hello, cognac. I love cognac.
Cognac. I know, me too. Okay. Yeah, me too. It is like my favorite thing right now. Okay, so we have that in there. Then I'm going to add in about 1 ounce of coffee liqueur.
Ew. All right. Not ew as in gross, as ew as in
Ew, what a fun. Yeah. So we have that. And then last but certainly not least, I have a chai syrup here. And by the way, make chai syrup. It's so freaking good. You can use chai tea with the sugar and water. It just creates so much fun flavor. And especially in this cocktail, oh, it's so good.
I've got a chai bitters that works out pretty good in cocktails.
Ooh, that'd be good too. Yeah. So, okay, we did a 1/2 ounce of our coffee liqueur and a 1/2 ounce of our chai syrup. Now, Brad, I always dry shake with my flips, but I've seen both ways where you don't have to. What's your take on that? Do you dry shake?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I do, and sometimes I don't, right? Like I can still get a good froth going without dry shaking.
Yeah.
So if I don't want to dry shake, I won't.
I'm gonna dry shake.
By the book, should you? Sure, but like, I don't know. Just the most important thing is that you shake hard, right? Like that's the thing that when people make egg white cocktails and they're not aggressive with shaking,
shake hard,
then the egg white cocktail just kind of comes out gooey and gross. So
ew.
You are clearly
that'll give me
hard.
the egg ick just by hearing that.
It's not a good look.
No. Okay, so. Adding my ice in. It kind of melted. Okay. All right. There we go. Oh, little extra armwork. All right, here we go.
And see, solid. Ice hits the top, ice hits the bottom. It's an aggressive shake. Shake it till it's too cold to hold. You can already hear the ice starting to change tone, right? Like it's not as loud as it was.
Whew.
Yeah.
Hands are cold. Hands are cold. Ooh, but it looks really frothy. Okay, dumping my ice.
Bring it. All right. Let's see what we got. All right, there it goes. Oh, that's a pretty glass.
All right. Moment of truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, coupe glass. I feel like even Morganthaler's whiskey sour could have gone in a coupe glass, but again, he made it with ice. So
yeah, he did it with ice. I mean, again, I've seen it both ways. I think it kind of depends on your preference, but a little nutmeg on top.
No, look at that. It's just too good.
Come on.
How nice. Yes.
Little taster.
Oh, what are we seeing here?
Think about a less sweet, more delicious, boozy, creamy milkshake.
Nice.
It's so good. And I love all these wintry flavors. It's shaken with ice. It's cold, but it warms you up. It's so good. And if you love a creamy cocktail, Brad, I think you really got to try this one out.
Is the coffee pretty strong in there?
No. It's like a perfect feint to like meld the flavors together. And I think it's because of the chai syrup. I think the chai syrup really helps bring out all those flavors together.
Cool.
So
sweet.
Good.
All right.
I love it.
Well, cheers. Huh? Clink.
Hey, cheers, Brad. Yeah.
Come on.
Wow.
To the camera.
Look at that.
Just right there. Cheers. All right.
Woo. Okay, well, now we have our cocktails, Bradley.
Got our cocktails. Should we get into the story?
Yeah, should we do our history lesson for the day?
No, let's talk about the history.
All right, Uncle Brad, I have my flippity flip, and I'm ready to flip the script and learn about the history of the Amaretto Sour. It's such a classic. I feel like everyone forgets about it and then remembers it towards the end of the year, because it is, I feel like, kind of that fall wintry cocktail. When you have it again, you're like, dang it, that's good. And it's good for a reason.
Yeah, it's good for a reason. Like, I don't know if I could knock back a bunch of these, right?
Right. Kind of
But
like a White
one,
Russian, you know, you only have
yeah,
one or
totally. But
two.
one's like really nice, right? For like
Yeah,
a dessert cocktail. So
totally.
that's the way I look at it. The history of the Amaretto Sour. Now, unfortunately, the history behind the drink is quick, right? It's not even,
Okay.
it's thin at best. So, what I'd like to do, and I think this actually plays into the history of the cocktail. In fact, it does play into the history of the cocktail.
Hmm.
I think we should talk about the history of Amaretto
Okay.
and then, or at least where it came from, and then
Sure.
the history kind of behind like American Italians, right? Like Italians in America,
Come
how
on.
that I know, and I'm actually curious to kind of know some of your family perspective on this, but just how like evolution of Italians in America, how that kind of came about because it actually has a role here in Amaretto, and then we'll talk about like where the Amaretto sour, just like how it got here, and then where it's at today. So if that sounds good to you, I'll dig in, Jules. All right.
Sounds great to
So here
me.
we go. Now let me start off by saying this: Amaretto. What does
Yep.
the word Amaretto sound like?
Uh, sound like?
What's it sound like? What when you think when you
Oh,
hear
well,
Amaretto?
I mean, just because I know it's almond, right?
No. And that's what a lot
Okay.
of people think. They're like, oh, Amaretto is Italian for almond. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not.
Okay.
It's actually, it means a little bitter. So now look at the word Amaretto again and tell me what you see. Amaro. Amari. Yeah.
Jeez. These guys are
Isn't that
good.
cool?
These guys are
They're
good.
good. They're so good.
Yeah.
Freaking
Yeah.
Italians.
The Italians and their
So
Amaro, which Brad, by the way, I know I'm totally gonna go off gears here, but I'll bring
bring
us
it.
back.
Go off gears.
We need to get
Whatever that
into
means.
Amaro one of these episodes because Amaro is such a broad, confusing category. But it's so good. I mean, you have so many different or Amaretto's one, Campari's one. Like there's just it's so broad. I'd love to talk about it one day and really get into it.
Yeah, we can definitely get into it. I think we've touched on it a few times in previous episodes, but
Hmm.
yeah, like this is a category. And honestly, I think if there's a place to go explore, it's drinking in Italy. That I
Okay,
almost feel like
perfect.
could be a season, right? Like you could just
Yeah.
talk about because, like Italian spirits and amaros and vermouths and liqueurs, it's kind of like it's a newish thing to
Hmm.
us,
Hmm.
believe it or not. So let's talk a little bit about the history, and this will kind of become a little bit more apparent. So, all right,
Yeah.
so we figured out that amaretto means a little bitter
Hmm.
in Italian, and there are multiple makers of amaretto. It's not just di Saronno, di
Right.
Saronno,
Di Sorono.
but you've also got Lazzaroni, which is
Yes.
also a maker of amaretto, different style, but still making amaretto. And then you've got like makers like Bowls and other whatnot that's not from Italy.
Spooky.
Okay,
Yeah.
I almost kind of feel like amaretto deserves like it needs to be like just like kind of like tequila can only come from a certain area in
Agree.
Mexico. I don't know, but I think too many people are invested now outside of Italy in the amaretto game that they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. So two families claim responsibility for creating amaretto.
Hmm.
Lazzaroni being one of them, and then the Reina family of Sorono. The Lazzaroni family is also from Sorono.
Ooh.
Uh-huh. So, by the way,
Drama.
when you hear di Sorono, that means of Sorono, right? So, and it used to
Oh.
actually be called, and a lot of people might still call this Amaretto di Sorono, but they actually changed their name to just di Sorono a while back. Okay,
Wow. Okay.
so
All right.
let's start with the Lazzaroni family. Okay, so the Lazzaroni starts that there was a bakery back in the early 1700s,
Hmm.
and a cardinal from Milan was visiting Sorono, and people in the area wanted to make gifts for this cardinal. And so this bakery came up with a cookie using apricot kernels ground down, a little sugar,
Are we
flour, egg
talking
whites, and what?
biscotti?
Oh,
Oh,
no, not
okay.
biscotti. Not
Okay.
biscotti.
Okay.
But this gets interesting. So they make this
Okay.
cookie, and the signature flavor of the cookie is amaretto. Now you're like, wait a minute, you said apricot kernels. Yeah, apricot kernels
Yes.
are
Yes.
called bitter almonds, and they
Mm-hmm.
actually have an almond flavor to them.
Yes.
Now,
Yes, they
they
do.
also contain cyanide, so if you
That is
consume 40 to 50 of them, it'll kill you.
right.
But
Yes.
yeah, but the Italians consider cherry pits, they consider apricot kernels, peach pits, all of that is called a bitter almond.
Mm-hmm.
And the almond is actually a relative to the peach and apricot. And my dog agrees, as you can hear in the background. So anyway, so the Lazzaroni family, they make these cookies. And by the way, they were the first family to commercially package and sell cookies.
Wait, but what
FYI.
cookies?
The Lazzaroni cookies. You've seen them. If you've ever been standing in line at like Marshall's or TJ Maxx and you look at the random food things they have out, they're in a red tin or a red bag.
Wait.
Yep, that's the cookies.
I'm going to look this up right
They
now.
come from way back when. So
Oh my
in 1851.
God, right.
Yeah, you see them, right?
Uh-huh.
Yep. We'll post a picture
Wow.
up when we do this when we do this on YouTube too.
Wow.
So anyways, I know. So in 1851, they created the amaretto liqueur by infusing spirit with the cookies. And so today, the Lazzaroni recipe still uses those amaretti cookies. And that's the name of the cookies, the amaretti. Yeah.
That's cute. That's fun. I love that. Those Italians.
So,
those Italians. I can't help it. They're just too cute.
so smart.
Yeah.
Everything tastes good.
Oh.
All right. So now let's go to the Reina family. All right.
Okay.
The Reina family, which is the family that still owns the company that distributes Di Sarno. Say it for me.
Di Sarno.
Di Sarno. I don't know why. I want to go Di Serrano. Tequila Blanco. Di Serrano.
It's okay. You know what? The fact that you're highlighting it is enough for me.
Usually my Italian accents and pronunciations goes great. Sometimes I get hung up being a Minnesota.
I get it. It's tough. Yeah.
All right. So their story. So we're now going back to 1525. And there's an innkeeper, and she's a young woman who has been widowed. And she made amaretto because she fell in love with an artist, Bernardino Luini. Bernardino Luini, who is the gentleman who also he immortalized her in a Madonna fresco in the Church of the Madonna in Saronno. So if you go into the Church of the Madonna in Saronno, you can see this woman is there. So she gave him a gift. She made amaretto. And by the way, you can make homemade amaretto. So it's not super difficult.
Which, we're going to talk about on our tip, by the way. So in case you forgot.
Sweet. Yeah. You're not going to be grinding up apricot pits, I hope, because
Nope. We're doing an easy version. Don't worry. And by the way, for those wondering, I just had to look it up. Saronno is northern Italy. It's right outside of Milan.
It's by Milan.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because I was like,
I'm glad you said that.
Where the hell is this place?
Yeah. So well, let me tell you a little bit more. All right.
Okay. All right.
So in the 1600s, Giovanni Reina kind of rediscovers the recipe that this young woman used for amaretto. And they start making it, kind of as a family beverage and probably distributing it around town. And then in 1900, Domenica Reina opened up a store and a workshop just outside or right at the train station that connects Saronno to Milan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then this is where at the time it was called Amaretto di Saronno, was first
Oh,
commercially sold, and it was sold in wine bottles, not the square bottle that we know today.
right.
So they're the so there's the two families. The Di Serono is probably the more famous of the
Hmm.
amarettos that's out there, and so in 1942 they transitioned to a square bottle, probably similar to the Lazzaroni bottle here because they
Yeah.
were using wine bottles.
Their
And
bottle is
then
iconic, by the way, with the knob on the top. I mean, talk
yeah,
about branding right there.
so here's the cool thing, right? Like remember when we talked about what was it, the Negroni Spagliato, or maybe it was the
Yes.
Aperol Spritz. Might have been the Aperol Spritz.
Okay.
Up in Milan, remember how we were talking about like, that bartender didn't have glassware to put his cocktail in. So being that master glassmakers were nearby, he incorporated, he brought one of them in to make glasses, which is why kind
Hmm.
of you got this
Hmm.
big wonky glass, right? So same thing. So Di Sorno, Sarono. God, Di
It's
Sarono. I
okay.
don't know why I'm starting. Di Sarono. Di
Yeah.
Sarono. No, Sorono. Whatever. All right. So, anyways, so
Di
they
Serono.
they want to separate themselves from all of the other amarettos out there. So they,
Smart.
create this iconic bottle in 1971 that was made by this master glass blower. And
Yeah.
because it was near Milan, Milan's super trendy, high design, like you can, oh, you can start to see like where this design starts to take off in the bottle, right? Like
Yeah.
the bottle is just, it's unique. It's, got that
It's
rectangle
pretty.
shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got the wavy glass, but then also the kind of avant-garde top, right?
I
So
kind of like it
such a
too
Milan
because
thing.
it's kind of like a book. You can put it in the shelf to where like when you have a weird gap in your bar cart, you can just kind of shoop.
Yeah, zip it right in there.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice.
so so that's 1971, but prior to that, they had just started exporting to the United States in the 1960s.
Hmm.
So how they make it, we talked about this. They use an infusion of apricot kernels, and then they have like 17 secret herbs and fruits that they incorporate also into it.
And this is
Um,
with Disaronno.
yep, Di Serono. And then the Lazzaretti family or Lazzaroni family uses cookies, and then others probably use a variety of different. So I'll kind of quickly go through this part because there's just so much detail I could get into. But Italians started immigrating into the United States, right, in
Yes.
the 1890s, I think, through early 1900s,
Hmm.
and they brought their traditions with them, right, and they lived in communities together. And so you've got Little Italy, as an example, in New York, and that's because they
And San
wanted to live
Diego.
near their people. And
Uh-huh.
what do? They open up shops and they open up restaurants, and they're featuring Italian
They're
foods,
Italian
right?
Americans now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we know the importance of aperitivos and digestivos for the Italians, and wine with dinner. Like it's just
Hmm.
it's not sport. It just goes with the meal, right? Like it's a part of
Right.
the meal. It helps you digest. It helps you get you hungry. The aperitivo helps you kind of enjoy the meal, the wine, and then maybe the digestivo after the meal help you digest
It's
what you just
subtle.
consumed.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
ritual. Well, for Americans, we like sweet over here, and so the
Who, us?
aperitivo, yeah, I know. The aperitivo and the Italian style foods, like it didn't really catch on early on in the United States movie.
Hmm.
So The Godfather comes out, people are like, "Oh my god, mind blown." And like they're really starting to get into the Italian thing. And it already started to kind of happen in the 60s when, we started to embrace diversity and culture a bit more. So people started to get a little bit more curious, and Italians are kind of starting to get back to their roots a little bit more, because before
Hmm.
that it was like loads of cheese and steaks and stuff like that. Like, and that's
Well,
not
no, and
true.
I mean,
Yeah.
even, my family, one of the reasons why we don't have as many roots and we don't know Italian is because when they moved here, you don't speak Italian. Like
No,
you learn
no,
English.
you
Like
were
nobody
discriminated
wants to
against.
hear
Yeah.
Italian.
You tried to blend
Yes.
in. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
Crazy.
it's sad because now it's like, man, you
Totally.
think about Italy, it's like, you guys are cool.
No, you guys are cooler. Like I'm like,
Yeah,
God, why did we leave?
I know. So, all right, so Godfather comes out and things Italian take off, and so I was reading this article from the 1978 Washington Post, and they were talking about amaretto, and just it was impossible to find. Now it started coming to the United States in the late '60s,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's sweet, right? And so people are like, okay, yeah, they're kind of starting to get attached to it. Godfather
I
comes
like
out, boom,
sweet.
amaretto takes off, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you can't find it on the shelves anymore in the stores. They
Isn't
were
that crazy?
selling 100 million cases of
Jesus.
amaretto in 1978.
That's crazy.
Today they sell about 1.2, 1.3 million.
Wow.
Like that's how crazy amaretto got.
Wow.
So people were putting it on everything in their coffee. Cooks were working with it. And by the way, it goes great with whipped cream. It goes great in pancakes. It goes great in my coffee. I had it this morning.
It goes great
And
near
so
Tom and Jerry's. Yeah.
yeah, so like amaretto kind of becomes like the in drink. And according to the author, he says amaretto has recently become the air quote in drink around Washington. It can give the would-be Deb or the part-time playboy the proper touch of snob appeal. Now, Deb means debutante, and playboy means playa, right?
Playa.
so,
Yeah. Playboy
so
means Playboy.
yeah, totally. And so, like people are like they're into it. They're drinking their amaretto on the rocks. They're feeling super cool, and of course there was some dissenting points of view as well. So you've got the guy in the article goes on to he talked to a different bartender, and this is bartender Kelly is the only name I have in the
Mm-hmm.
article.
Mm-hmm.
And bartender Kelly said, "Well, when I work a place and the people begin to come in and ask for a drink like amaretto, I feel the place is in trouble." Because the funny dressed disco set, the kind who likes sweet drinks, with manicured nails and maybe drive Chevy Malibus, they like the stuff.
Yes. Right.
Driving
Right.
Chevy Malibus.
Yeah.
so so and then said the bartender went on to say this is also the same person that who asks for a sambuca at $2.25 a hit, $2.25, which is
Oh,
great. Yeah, I know.
yeah.
So so that's how popular it became. But then you think about the Amaretto Sour, you're like, oh God, but it was so like what a gross cocktail. And it's because it came from the cocktail dark ages, right? So back in the 70s and even the 60s, even through a good part of the 80s, if not all the way through the 80s up until the late 80s or the
Mm-hmm.
90s, people didn't want to drink the drinks that our grandparents drank or their parents drank, right? They weren't into the golden era cocktails, the elegant
Right.
cocktails that we've talked about, right? They wanted something that was sweet and syrupy and different. And, the Amaretto Sour, which was by the book, sweet and sour mix and amaretto. If you ever see a recipe for that, run. Don't
Yeah.
use sweet and sour mix. Don't use sour mix. You don't need to do that. Just
100%.
simple syrup, fresh
Yes.
lemon juice. That's what makes a cocktail. The fresh ingredients makes the cocktail taste great.
100%.
So, but they didn't care about that back then.
Right.
And how the
Right.
amaretto sour took off. One, the environment was right, but two, going back to The Godfather, right?
Mm-hmm.
After The Godfather comes out, the Godfather cocktail spins out behind the movie, and that's amaretto and scotch. And then the Godmother cocktail comes out, and that's
I've made that, by the
amaretto
way.
and vodka. You made the Godfather
It's so
or
good.
the Godmother? Yeah, I
No,
know
the
you made the
Godfather.
Godfather. It's
Yeah.
great.
It's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
the sweetness plays with the scotch so well.
It does. It's almost like I like a rusty nail, which is Drambuie and scotch too, right?
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
a good, it's
yeah.
just a good after dinner drink. You
Agree.
don't want to drink dessert or you don't want to drink your dessert and then have dessert in front of you because that's a recipe for indigestion. Like have one sweet thing, have one savory thing, right?
Yeah,
Like don't
agree.
don't do two sweet things. That's bad news.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the Godfather comes out, the Godmother comes out, the Godchild comes out, which is with cream. And then the next thing, I mean, they're just looking around for things to mix up. Nobody takes credit for the invention of the Amaretto Sour. It's just two freaking ingredients. But the Amaretto Sour comes right on the heels of that. And that drink becomes ubiquitous with that time period, and especially throughout the 80s. I mean, they were everywhere. You go to like a country club and they're drinking Amaretto Sours. You go to a bar, they're drinking Amaretto Sours. Like everybody's drinking Amaretto Sours until they weren't. We got sick of that during the cocktail renaissance
Well,
in the
when
90s.
he hits
it was,
something
like,
so
gross.
hard, I mean, come on. What do you expect?
And it does. I mean, amaretto is delicious. It's great on the rocks with sour mix that prepackaged stuff. Like, forget it. Like, gross.
It's bad.
And maybe, your palate is adjusted to that. But when you move on from something like that, you're like, okay, like I'm ready for this
Yeah.
thing to taste different. So the cocktail gets like
Right.
dropped. People aren't drinking them anymore, except for Jeffrey Morganthaler, who said the Amaretto Sour was a guilty pleasure. And he looked at the Amaretto Sour and said, how can I make this better? So he threw the sour mix out, uses fresh lime juice, incorporates a little 2-to-1 simple syrup, and adds a little cask strength bourbon
Uh-huh.
to stand up to the sweetness.
Yep.
And that now becomes kind of like the way that people enjoy the Amaretto Sour, at least they should. So when he created it and he put it on his website, I was listening to an interview that he did, and he said people were just reaching out. They're like, "Oh man, you can't call it the Amaretto Sour if you're going to change, the ingredients in the drink." And it's like, I can appreciate that, right? Like, so it's not an Amaretto Sour anymore, right? Like that's why I call it the Morgenthaler Amaretto Sour, because honestly, he did twist it a little bit. Kind of
Yeah.
like, let's go back to like the Cosmopolitan, right? Neil Murray invented the Cosmopolitan. Toby
Mhm.
Cicchini put a bit of a twist on it, with
Right.
the Absolute Citron, right? And maybe introduce Cointreau, because I know Neil preferred triple sec.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't mean like Cicchini, shouldn't take credit, right? That he invented the
Right.
Cosmo. He should be
Right.
like, I modified it. And
Right.
Morgenthaler doesn't take credit for inventing the Amaretto Sour. He just
Yeah.
modified it.
Right.
So
Right.
so I can appreciate that, right? So, anyways, so that is how we got to the Amaretto Sour today that we're drinking. Is thank God for Jeffrey Morgenthaler, because who knows, this thing might be kind of stuck off in the bad drinks of the 70s, never to be revisited
Oh,
again. And honestly, I think those drinks need to be looked at again with better ingredients.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant, look at the menu, look at their ingredients. How can you improve, make it your own, make it better? I mean, I think the
Yeah,
amaretto sour, the way you made it, fantastic.
yeah,
It's so good. If you layer it right, it can be very balanced and
mhm,
very approachable and very delicious. Where I think that there are certain cocktails that have just kind of steered people away from really well balanced, delicious, sweeter drinks, which is
yeah.
kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a sweet cocktail like for dessert. You don't
But
want that, doesn't
sometimes,
want to be the
yeah,
first thing you start with, right? Like when I
right.
again, it just drives me crazy when I see bars serving espresso martinis with like chocolate and whipped cream and stuff like that. It's like, God, that is
When
not
I
the
see
way
it
that drink is
like
supposed to be
this,
served.
when I see this pale, like whitish brown color, I'm running away. I'm out of there. I'm out. We're done.
Yeah, from the espresso martini, you mean? Yeah, and
Hmm.
it's not starting to separate. You're like, yeah, forget it.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
again, I mean, that's why the espresso martini gets a bad rap too, because some bartender from the 80s or 90s
So I'm jump.
probably said,
Yeah.
"Well, let's just Hershey syrup that thing," and blah.
Ah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, thank
Well, all
you.
right, we've got a lot of ground we just covered,
Yeah.
and I've got a lot of ground I need to edit. So let's move on to the tip.
Okay. Yeah. I feel
All
good. I
right,
feel confident about amaretto. So let's
cool.
move on. All
Let's
right.
do it.
We really hammered home the history of amaretto and amaretto liqueur, di Serono, all of it. I wanted to give everybody a very quick tip, which is how to make it on your own. And I will say, this is a very easy recipe. It does not beat some of the stuff you can buy. Just they've been doing it much longer. They have better equipment. Take my word for it. If you can go out and buy it, please do. But if you wanted to A, try something new, or B, you're running low and you have these ingredients, which most likely you do, easy to put together. So essentially, what you're going to do is you're actually going to start by making a syrup. So I've seen a couple of different recipes out there. I've seen a couple of recipes with 1 cup water, 1 cup sugar, and a half cup of brown sugar. Not that I'm counting calories, Brad, don't come at me. But sometimes I can find that to be too sweet. So what I like to do instead is I like to do a cup of water and a cup of brown sugar. So
Okay.
just keeping it 1 to 1. So, regardless of how you do your syrup, you're going to make it the same way, right? You're going to put the sugar and the water together, medium heat, stir until the sugar dissolves. From there, you're just going to let it cool, and you want it to cool completely because you don't want it to cook off what you're adding next. which is once it's cooled, you're going to add in 2 tablespoons of almond extract.
Mhm.
And then you're going to add in about 1 to 2. It depends on your preference, but I like 2, maybe a little 3 of vanilla extract. You're going to mix that together. And then in a separate container, I mean, you can use an old booze bottle, you can use a weck jar. You're going to add in about 2 to 2.5. I like 2.5 cups of vodka. Then you're going to add in that syrup mixture. You're going to mix it together. I do like to let it sit for a day or 2 before using it.
Mhm.
But that's it. Then you have your own easy, quick, homemade amaretto liqueur that you just made at
Damn.
home.
That
Really
sounds
easy, right?
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess this amaretto liqueur thing, that was like a thing that Italians had in their kitchens, so saith some of these articles.
Together.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I,
yeah.
again, like I said, Disaronno uses 17 different spices, right? So
Mhm.
I definitely think if you want to make it at home, you can play with adding maybe a little bit of cinnamon or a little bit of nutmeg or whatever you want. But Disaronno's been around for a while. Same with the other one, the Lazzaroni. Lazzaroni?
Mhm.
Um,
Lazzaroni.
yeah, it's been around for a while for a reason. They taste delicious, but it would be fun to get your bottles and try to make it as similar as you can and then write that
Mhm.
recipe down and, you know, have it to pass down to your family down the line.
Yeah.
But it's that easy. So
Yeah. Cool.
there's your
Well, there you
tip.
go.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great tip, Jules.
Thanks. That was easy.